Welcome to today's Explainer. Okay, let's just dive right in. We are exploring the fascinating, incredibly high-stakes biochemistry of how your body safely handles its own toxic waste. It's literally a microscopic juggling act that happens inside you every single day, and the sheer precision required to keep you alive is absolutely mind-blowing.
Think about the last time you really pushed yourself physically. When you go hard during vigorous exercise, your muscles aren't just burning through sugar. They actually start breaking down protein. And here's the catch. This degradation produces a nitrogen byproduct that is highly toxic to your cells if left unchecked. Your body has to get rid of it, and it has to do it fast.
So here's our facility map for the Explainer today. We're going to trace this waste from the muscle's nitrogen problem, cruise down the highway to the liver, check out the recycling centers, and finally, look at what happens when these vital systems experience a genetic glitch. All right, Section 1, the body's nitrogen problem. Let's quickly establish why nitrogen is such a massive biological threat to the human body. During a really heavy workout, your muscles switch to anaerobic exercise. They degrade glycogen, but they also degrade muscle protein. The absolute first step of breaking down those amino acids from the protein is stripping off their nitrogen groups. Boom, you suddenly have excess nitrogen building up as ammonium. This isn't just regular waste, it's a literal poison. Your cells urgently need to remove this ammonium to avoid severe cell toxicity, but the muscles can't process it locally, they've got to ship it out. Which brings us to Section 2, transporting toxic waste, the highway to the liver. How exactly does the body move this dangerous waste without poisoning your entire bloodstream along the way? So, instead of just dumping raw, toxic ammonia straight into your blood, your muscles actually package it up. They attach the amino group to pyruvate to create an amino acid called alanine. Alanine then acts as a highly secure armored car, safely escorting that nitrogen from your skeletal muscles right through the circulatory system, straight to the liver where it can finally be dealt with. Now, the real genius here is this concept of intrinsic economy. Your body is the ultimate multitasker. Alanine doesn't just safely transport that excess waste. By using this alanine-glucose cycle, the exhausted muscle actually offloads the heavy energetic burden of making new glucose directly onto the liver. The liver takes the alanine, pulls off the toxic nitrogen, and uses the leftover carbon to make fresh glucose to ship right back to the muscle. It's a seriously elegant biological trade-off.
Okay, so once that waste safely arrives, it enters our body's central processing plant. Section 3, inside the urea cycle. Discovered way back in 1932 by Hans Krebs. Even before he discovered the famous citrate cycle, this process happens almost exclusively in your liver. It systematically converts that toxic ammonium into totally harmless urea across 5 really precise chemical steps. It kicks off with the formation of carbamoyl phosphate, which then forms citrulline, followed by arganosuscinate. That gets cleaved apart into fumarate and arginine. And finally, the arginine is converted into harmless urea and ornithine, which resets the whole cycle. And what's wild is that this chemical juggling act actually crosses cellular borders. Stage 1 begins deep inside the liver cell, right inside the mitochondrial matrix. But it doesn't stay there. As it converts to citrulline, it literally crosses the membrane out into the cytosol, the main fluid of the cell, to finish up the final steps of urea formation. Once the urea is made, it hits the bloodstream, gets sequestered by the kidneys, and is safely excreted.
But this vital waste management definitely isn't free. It actually costs the cell 4 ATP equivalents to generate just one single molecule of urea. Because it is so incredibly expensive energetically, it's heavily regulated. The cycle is allosterically activated by a molecule called N-acetyl glutamate, or NAG. Think of NAG like a volume dial. It cranks up the machinery exactly when you need it most, like when you're eating a high-protein diet, or during prolonged starvation when your body is forced to break down its own muscle for survival.
Moving right along to Section 4, the Krebs bicycle connection. Let's look at how these cycles link up to connect our waste plant directly back to the power grid.
So, we've all heard of the Krebs cycle, right? But have you ever heard of the Krebs bicycle? Also known as the aspartate arganosuccinic shunt, this pathway is the critical communication hotline between the urea cycle we just talked about and the citrate cycle, which is the body's main energy generator.
It's amazing how the gears of this biological bicycle mesh together. Remember step 4 of the urea cycle where fumarate is cleaved off? Well, that fumarate actually jumps right into the citrate cycle as a shared intermediate. In the process, it generates NADH, which is eventually used to produce about 2.5 ATP.
This beautifully helps offset that steep 4 ATP energy cost of running the urea cycle. Your body literally uses the exhaust from the waste plant to help power the waste plant. How cool is that?
But wait, the job isn't quite done yet. Section 5, recycling carbon skeletons. No waste left behind. The body still has the leftover carbon skeletons from those original amino acids to deal with.
Because really, your body is the ultimate zero-waste recycling plant. It meticulously splits the amino acid molecule right down the middle. So while the toxic nitrogen group heads off toward the urea cycle, the leftover carbon skeleton is sent down completely different pathways to be repurposed. We're not throwing anything away here.
The liver basically sorts these carbon leftovers into two distinct bins. In one bin, we have glucogenic amino acids. These are processed into pyruvate, or oxaloacetate, and eventually rebuilt into brand new glucose. In the other bin, we have ketogenic amino acids. These take a totally different route, turning into acetyl-CoA, which our body uses to synthesize fatty acids or ketone bodies for alternative fuel.
Every single one of the 20 amino acids plugs right back into the central energy grid. You can trace exactly where the glucogenic and ketogenic inputs feed in. It's just a staggering web of efficiency, ensuring literally no piece of the original consumed protein goes to waste. Every single carbon atom is squeezed for its absolute maximum potential.
And finally, that brings us to Section 6, when the system fails. What happens when there are inborn errors in metabolism in this flawless processing plant?
When there's a genetic glitch and the enzymes for these pathways are defective, the backups can be devastating. Take PKU, for example. If you can't break down the amino acid phenylalanine, it just builds up in the blood and tissues, causing severe neurological and developmental issues. Historically, nurses actually used to detect this in infants because the chemical buildup creates a distinct musty odor. Another example is alkaptonuria, a disease linked to a single gene mutation. It's so stark that the oxidized metabolic waste literally turns the patient's urine black. And since we can't just go in and fix the cellular machinery yet, treatment mostly requires super rigid dietary control to limit the intake of the specific amino acids the body can't process.
Other failures in waste breakdown manifest in very, very physical ways. For instance, your body relies on specific enzymes to detoxify ingested D-amino acids, which you actually find a lot in bacterial cell walls or even grilled foods. If those byproducts aren't cleared out properly, they can crystallize as calcium oxalate. These crystals form literal blockages, better known as kidney stones, that can get firmly stuck.
These stones drop down and physically block the ureters of our body's plumbing system. And anyone who has ever had one will tell you it serves as a highly painful physical reminder of just how incredibly crucial our invisible metabolic pathways really are. When the chemical waste isn't cleared, the biological plumbing backs right up.
So we've traced this whole incredible journey, from a tired muscle cell all the way to a completely neutralized waste product. I want to leave you with this thought to ponder today. If your liver manages this dangerous, invisible, perfectly balanced chemical juggling act every single second of every day just to keep you alive and healthy, what other microscopic miracles are happening inside you right now without you even knowing it? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the incredible machinery of the human body.